and then just say like, now that you do that again.
Hello. Welcome back to our show.
I got
Our show, it's called A Year of Mature Learning. This is a show where we read books and we reflect on the lesson we learn, and we talk about it. And today we are up to book 51. Our reflection title today is Reference Points Matter. Strive to meet people where they are in life. And I'll let Chris take over.
Yeah. So sorry to anyone listening to this. The beginning of that, we were in the middle of a heated discussion, and Drew just hit the record button immediately. So was not ready.
It's effective.
But that said, yeah. So this book today we're going to be talking about. It's called "The Hard Things About Hard Things: Building a Business Where There Are No Easy Answers" by the author Ben Horowitz. You guys heard of this book or read it before? Or
yes, it's kind of popular in the startup world.
Yep. Yeah. Blake, you ever heard of this one?
I haven't heard of this one. I don't think. I know the author, but never heard of that book.
Yeah. So yeah, Ben Horowitz is the co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, like the huge VC startup, like one of the biggest VC,
because if you're in a startup and you're in the VC, you know these two. These
right,
two are like the titans of that.
Right. Yeah, I think Mark. I think his co-founder Mark Andreessen like just bought like the most expensive home in California history or something like that. These guys, have certainly had a successful career.
Yes.
and
these guys. I mean, Mark Andreessen is the OG.
Yeah.
Right.
They've been around for a while and they've been doing this stuff for a while. So so this book is about Ben Horowitz and his time as a CEO, and it's about practical wisdom for managing the tough problems in business that business schools don't cover. It stemmed from his blog postings that he used to write for himself, and then it was just something he felt like he wanted to share his story about, his time as a CEO and talking about the hard things that people don't talk about, like firing employees and stealing, recruiting away your friends from recruiting away employees from other people's companies or your friends, and having to I'll get to the reflection in a second here, but that's basically what the story is about. So my reflection, this one is really deeply personal. This whole journey is deeply personal, but this one is probably one of the most deeply personal reflections for myself. So the reason why, if you read the title, it'd say reference points matter and strive to meet people where people are in life. This makes no sense for the book at all. Like, I mean, this is one of the beauties of this journey, right? Like these things spawn different thoughts in my own head. Because different times in my life when I was going through these things, I was thinking about completely different things than the intention of this book. So this book in particular was one of those books I wrote at the top of this thing that it's one of those books for me that where I will never forget the time and place that I was consuming this particular book, and for a myriad of reasons. The first one is I started this book about 3 days before my daughter passed away in the NICU. So I had just finished my last book. It was The Compound Effect, actually, by Darren Hardy. I was just kind of beginning this balanced quest for myself to try to stay sane while we were, fighting for our daughter's life in the NICU, and she was, battling what she was battling through. I was trying to stick to this, 30 minutes a day of reading every single day kind of thing. And I had just finished the Compound Effect. So the next day I started this book, and the only reason I picked this book, at that point in time, I really was just kind of picking books willy-nilly, basically from the business world, from what I had known, was where I was going to for most of the time. My the old CEO that I used to report to at HC1, his name's Brad. I remember, a few years ago, I reported directly to him for a small time in my last couple of months that I was there. And I remember asking him, like, what are some of the books that you've always found really valuable? I forget how we got on that topic, but anyway, he ended up sharing a couple of them, and this was one of them. He had mentioned like this book, Bad Blood, the book about the Theranos CEO, Elizabeth Holmes, and And I think I think he said one more that was really impactful for him. So I respect Brad, and I respect his, his career. And, for me at that time in my life, like being a CEO and starting my own company was something that was really, really important to me. And it's something I had tried many times in my life. And it was something that I always thought was going to be kind of like the pinnacle of my career, of what I really wanted to do. It was my dream, right? That was what I had been shooting for my whole entire career. So when this guy recommended this, I was like, let's do it, right? So I needed a book really fast after I just finished the other one, so I picked this one up and started it. So I only got about a quarter of the way through, and that was when Amelia passed away. And we can talk about that for days and days and days, but long story short, my world kind of just came to a stop, right? So I didn't really care about much at all. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe that time in my life, of those first couple of days after Amelia had passed away. But that said, after the fog kind of cleared of the couple of days, after Amelia had passed away, and we had to start to get to work on planning her funeral and all the arrangements, and Felicia's mom and family and all flew in from Texas. By about a week later, things were, I guess there was kind of a little bit of time to start to maybe do anything else beyond like those activities that come with, a death in the family kind of thing. So we decided we all wanted to go down to my parents' lake house for the day, just to kind of get away. And Felicia took her family down there, and I drove my own car separate because we didn't have enough space. So I was driving by myself. I was listening to this as an audiobook. I threw it on in my car. And, as I was on my way down there, I was listening to it, and then we were on our way back later on that night, and it's about an hour and a half drive. And I was driving up the road, and we get to this portion of the audiobook when Ben's talking about when he was the CEO at Loud Cloud, and he got put in this situation where like everything was falling apart. They had like no more run rate left in their business. They were going to either have to lay off the entire staff, or he needed to get money like really, really fast. So he had two options. He was staring at: lay off this entire company and just close up shop, or try to take the company public. Was his ace in the hole, I guess, if you will, at that time, to raise funds really fast in a recession. During, this is like after the kind of the dot-com boom bust kind of time frame. And people were like, you're crazy. Like, you can't take a company public that's, not profitable. It's, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, look, I don't know what else to do. So he sought a bunch of advice, and eventually he made a decision to take the company public, and it ended up working out. But as he was finishing up his story about all this, he ended up saying, like, that's when you really know if you can be a CEO in this world, when you can, be staring at two problems that there's no good answer for either of them. And you have to make the decision and just own it. Right. And I'm listening to this as I'm driving in my car on the way back, just maybe 5 or 6 days after my daughter had passed away. And as you guys know, we had to make the call to end Amelia's life, just because things had gotten so bad, and her body was, it was awful. And, she was in a ton of pain, and we had to make that call of whether or not to keep fighting and let her keep fighting, and see her in immense pain, or hope for a miracle and try to keep pushing, or unfortunately have to end her battle. And I'm listening to this guy talk about a business, like, and these people's jobs, and I'm like, this is just, I stopped the car, I turned it off, and I was like, I was just furious. I was like, you want to talk about hard things, like try to end your daughter's life, a week before, and have to make that fucking decision. Sorry, this isn't a PG, but it
isn't a show for kids, so
right, yeah,
it's it's quite all right.
Sorry. So I was furious, and it took me a long time to process, that whole decision that I had to make and I had to own, of ending Amelia's battle. And the reason why I titled this whole thing of Reference Points Matter, like, I was living in a different world than Ben was. I don't want to shit on Ben's, story. Like it's relevant to him, and it was a hard thing, and it probably does inspire a lot of people. 5 days before that, I probably would have been eating this thing up. Fast forward 5 days later, and what he's talking about was the hardest thing that he's ever had to go through in his life, was literally something that was like deeply troubling to me, of like, man, if that's the hardest thing you have to go through in this world, that's a pretty good life, you know. You know, as I continued to process this whole entire journey and move forward, you know, it's always a constant reminder for myself to always try to remember that people are on a different reference point. You have to meet them where they are in their life. Like you can't, it's not a carte blanche statement for everybody. Like everybody has a deeply personal journey that they are going through. And to remember that at any given point in anybody's journey, they may be going through something fantastic, hard. The scale, it doesn't matter like where you're at. You always have to try to figure out where they are and to try to make sure that you're meeting them where they are. And that's something that I've always tried. I will strive to do for the rest of my life. And I've always tried to do since this point in time. And, you know, I wrote about it in the book and I wrote about it here. And like, this stuff really matters to me. Is like, you can't just go around saying statements in this world that are, you know, carte blanche, like everybody should understand it and it'll apply to all worlds. Like, no, everybody is unique and different and they should be treated that way. And that's kind of the general gist of this whole entire reflection. Anyway, I'll pause there. I know that was probably a lot. So let's love to get your guys' thoughts.
So why don't you go first, Blake?
Well, I mean, I think everything you said. I think it's, I mean, it was great. It was, you know, one of the things that you talked about was, you know, you have two bad, not great choices, and then owning it. And, you know, that kind of struck me for some reason, because I know there have been times in my life where I've, you know, it's like kind of like what do? You pick one, you know, you have two not great choices and you have to choose. And do you think you should own it and just commit to that? And is that how you should, or should you, I guess, kind of that reflection process, looking back? Like some people, I feel like they always, you know, especially because, you know, they look back and there's always regret of, oh, maybe I should have done this or I could have done this. You think, I guess that made me kind of think about just the whole process of owning, committing to a decision and the reflection, you know, looking back, reflecting on it, and, you know, just trying to figure out, you know, I guess it's hard for me to describe what I'm trying to say of own it, commit to it. Like learning in those situations of kind of from two bad choices. I guess it's some people I think are very stubborn. They make a choice, that's what they do, and they own. And I don't know if there's even any good reason to kind of wonder what if I would have made the other choice. But that's one thing I know sometimes in my life, and I know different people. Some people are like, this is what I did, this is what I commit to. There's no way I would have made this other choice. And other people kind of live in that regret, kind of, you know, oh, I should have done, always wondering, oh, what if I would have done this? I guess that was one thing that kind of stood out to me, if that makes sense. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. It's you know, regret's a powerful thing. And just to be honest with you, like I guess it depends on my honest answer to that would be, it depends on the level of the
Decision.
The problem at hand that you have no good options around, you know, and having a reference point of that even in your own life, you know, of is this really that big of a deal? Is deciding on leaving your job or not leaving your job, you know, really that important kind of thing? Is you know, I don't know. There's a lot of things in this world that we feel like are really, really, really important when I don't know that we have our values aligned to what's really important. I guess if that's the case. And then the second part,
looking back on those things, again, when you're talking about you know, a child's life, you might, you know, some people say, hey, this is what I had to do. This is, you know, and then there's probably got to be part, you know, I feel like, because I've been in a way a similar situation where I, you know, I look at it, I did this. This is why I did this. This is why I thought this was the best decision. But then there's another part of me that says, did I fight hard enough? And is there any value even in doing that? I guess, you know, and that's a big decision. But I guess I do struggle sometimes with looking back and saying, you know, am I being foolish, trying to say, hey, this is what I did. This is why I did this. This is why I think it's the best choice. Or, you know, looking back and saying, maybe I, you know, admit on a major decision, maybe in some ways, maybe I could have done things differently. Maybe it wasn't the right choice. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's no certainty in life in general. Like, I mean, I don't there's so my just hot take on your question and I guess the questioning around, like, you know, what do you do in that situation is really kind of what you're asking it from what I'm hearing. And I would say this is the framework that I approach any really important decision at this point in time. Is I look at my values and I evaluate them based off of that, and then I make a decision, and then I have to own that. Like, I mean, that's the only thing that I can do to give myself peace of mind, to know, like, look, this is what I didn't necessarily do it in that situation. That one was really just more heartfelt, and I don't know. I mean, I knew in the moment that I was going to regret that decision either way, one way or the other, for the rest of my life, and I knew that, and I'm at this point in time, I'm okay with the decision that we made, together as a family, and I was okay with either one of the decisions that we would have made together as a family. But like, at the end of the day, a decision just had to be made, and I was okay with owning that and taking that on for my family. But today, if you asked me to redo that whole entire scenario, I would have probably sat down and gone through the values of my family, like the values of my shared values of my wife and I, and how we wanted to raise our children, and what that looked like, and then come up with a decision based off of that. And that would at least have given us a compass to be able to guide through that scenario, versus just having to worry about your gut. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to ever make a decision based off of my gut ever again for the rest of my life, just in the moment, on in spontaneity. I'd rather, if it's a really important decision, I'd rather lean on my values for that.
It's amazing how that process really can't seem like a lot of questions I have. When you run through that process, it becomes very clear and simple. It makes sense. The other thing that stood out to me was the whole unique, where they're at thing. And that made me think about, especially like someone's very, let's say someone's very successful where they're at, and someone doesn't really have their life together, and someone says, hey, this is an accomplishment that I had that really isn't that significant, maybe just, but it's very big for them too. I think it's easy for sometimes people to be like, okay, that's not a big deal, you haven't done X, Y, Z, but kind of putting yourself in their situation and saying, hey, that's them taking that next step, and praising people for how, for making progress and understanding where they're at, and not belittling accomplishments, because it might be a big thing for where they're at in their life to get on the right path. So, that was one thing I guess, stood out to me a little bit. And, don't belittle people, shouldn't belittle their own, I guess, accomplishments to, small wins and things like that, and compare themselves to people that are, maybe in a different spot in their life. So.
Yeah. So what I take away from this is, the point of reference definitely matters. Every single measurement, you have to consider the measuring stick, because, it's whatever people are measuring, their answers to whatever it is based on what they're using to measure. And in order for us to connect with the other person that is not us, right? Are we using the same measuring stick are we looking from the same perspectives? And until you're able to do that, right, one thing is going to seem different to you. It's going to be, maybe it's too soft or too hard, whatever the case may be. When some people say, some water with a certain degree, it's either hot or cold depending on where they came from. If they came from a cold, if they put a hand in the colder water and put a hand in the, let's say let's say 80-degree water, room temperature water, and they put the hand in the ice, and then you go into the warm, the room temperature water, it's gonna be hot, right? And if you have something that is 100 degrees, you put your hand in there, and then suddenly you put it into the room temperature water at 80 degrees, it's gonna be cold. So perspective definitely matters from all angles, just because, so from your perspective, looking at what you think is hard is, 10 times, even 100 times harder than what Ben can, we've referenced as hard to him. And, so that's the thing is, sometimes when we, I guess, interact with other people, we assume there is a universal measuring stick. Right. And that's the incorrect way to, because I can't get to your level, Chris, unless I can see from your perspective. So I cannot connect with you. I cannot understand and fathom. I can't imagine what you're going through unless I can use the same measuring stick you are. And same thing with when I go into the Ben perspective, I have to use his measuring stick. What is he looking at? And so I think that's the lesson that I see from this, that I take away from this reflection is, you have to make sure that each perspective is always unique, always different, in order for us to, you know, be beneficial to the people that you're with, or talking to them or interact with them. You're gonna have to say, well, what measuring stick are we looking at, versus just assuming that all everybody using the same universal tape measure to measure everything. And if you take from that approach, then you're going to I guess alienate a lot of people, just because you don't understand what they're going through. And
Right.
I think that's something that you can take as lessons learned to become better, knowing yourself better, knowing other people better. And from there, it's this is where you can I guess harmonize and lead a better, more fruitful life. Or like you say, Chris, it's using your value to guide you in terms of how you want to live your life.
Yeah, I love that. That's a fan. I mean, I love it. Pretty much everything you just said there. It actually reminded me of the previous conversation that the three of us were having before we jumped on here, where we were talking about, like Blake, you were talking about, when you get into this whole Montessori workplace that we're trying to build, where, you're like, well, how do you know what people are going to want to do when they're, and the truth is we don't, but we need to understand where they are in their journey. Some of those people may, not know anything about themselves when they start their core values quest and they go through it. That doesn't mean that they can't still get value out of, and they can't still be a valuable contributing member of the ecosystem. Some people may come in like myself or something like that, where I've gone through a really immersive program that I've already gone through myself. And I feel like I know my purpose. I know my why. I know my values, and I know what I want to try to do in this world. But that doesn't mean that I'm better or worse than somebody else. That just means that we need to understand who they are. And that's the whole goal of Clubany, is to try to build an ecosystem around the individual as a collective at the same time. Take advantage of the collectiveness of being able to produce meaningful work and meaningful relationships with people that have a shared common goal of wanting to live a balanced life and to live and to find meaningful work and meaningful relationships, but not necessarily that they all are entering into this saying yeah, we know what's up and we're going to go get to work together. That's not the goal. It should be for everyone. It should be to meet them where they are in their journey, and then to help them to grow. Like you said, a small milestone for somebody that doesn't know themselves might just be to identify that they do have values, and then maybe people that already have identified these things and have a mission, help them to enhance that and go build new businesses off of that, or go build new entities or nonprofits or whatever we can do to help that. We just want to support everybody in where they are, and eventually, that's the plan at the end of the day.
Right. Yeah. So I guess the question we can leave with you is, how can you strive to try and always meet people where they are in their lives? One of the quote I like to keep saying, I think Chris and Blake, it's kind of tired of me saying this, but you can't judge the fish's ability by its ability to climb a tree, because you saying, these are the measuring stick for if you climb a tree, right, like a monkey does. Well, it's better, and you telling a fish that you're not good enough because you can't climb a tree. It's just essentially you're using the same measuring stick to measure this other species ability to compete with a monkey. And to me, that is where we went wrong in trying to say, well, everybody should do this, everybody should do that. But in reality, it's like a monkey can climb a tree best, a fish can swim best. You can't expect a fish to climb a tree.
Right. Or a beaver to be a lion,
to burrow in
right.
in the rabbit hole, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the whole point of Clubany, is to say each one of us, each one of the species, it is good in their own rights. And so that means that the point of reference definitely matters. And to me, this is where we need to take that as a lesson to say, well, how do we see from different people's perspective? How do we borrow the goggles of other people? And from there, we can learn more about ourselves, about other people around us.
Agreed. Awesome. Well, good conversation, guys. Thanks for joining, and we will see y'all tomorrow for book 52.
Yep. We'll see you. A good one.